advise that this is a regular Board of Education meeting. We have a quorum, and so our meeting will open up. We're here tonight. It's just a study session to discuss the possibility of attendance centers. This was brought to the board at the last meeting. I'm sure several people read it. Most of you probably read it in the paper. It's probably a surprise. We're always looking ways to move ahead. We're having a study session tonight because the board needed more answers, and I'm sure everybody in the audience does. So we'll start in right now with the presentation, and then we'll have a public comment session after the presentation.
The presentation that's on the TV screen is also on the school district website right now as well. So you can access that now until our Wi-Fi crashes or something. But it will be available. Everything that we're presenting in this presentation is on the website. To start with, I guess there's been two kind of general issues driving this discussion about attendance centers, and that's equality and financial resources. And from an equality standpoint, that includes academics, opportunities, and access, and then space that we continue to talk about on a regular basis. The second issue, as far as financial resources, with the new evidence-based funding formula that the state has, they identify 26 elements on how school districts are going to be funded. They take our enrollment, they take our demographics, which is our low income and our English language learners and every aspect of our students' demographics, and then they recommend where our resources should be used. So it's research-based best practice. They also suggest additional best practices for items like instructional coaches, some of those resources that we don't currently use, because quite frankly we don't have the resources to do so. Part of this is what maybe is allowing us to reshuffle our resources to better meet the needs of all kids. With evidence-based funding, it does not guarantee any new money to the district, and as I mentioned a number of times, we had a loss of our reorganization funds. This is the last year for that. Our replacement tax money has been reduced considerably. We are looking at likely deficit spending in the next couple of years, and we never know for sure what's coming out of Springfield. They talk about a cost shift, teachers' retirement, and so forth, which would have a huge impact. So basically what we have to do is find the best solution. We need to provide equal opportunities for all of our students. We need to make the best use of our resources, our money, our space, and our teachers. And we need to provide the best instruction that we can. So that's why we're having this discussion. Go to the next page. Up there we just put a couple of, many more, but just a couple challenges that I think we're facing going into next year as it is. This is as is. And one is adequate space. Most of you know, some of you may not, we do send the junior high kids from Arthur Grade School to the high school. And that's becoming somewhat of an issue just based on space. The high school is getting larger. High school enrollment right now is about 308. Next year we look to be 321. The year after that, 351. That's considerably bigger than it's been in the past. And when the junior high comes over here, they've typically, well, they've used this room, they use the gym, and possibly other places. And along with that space, even at Arthur Grade School, if we needed to expand our kindergarten from the number of sections we have now, there's not actually space in the building to do so. Back to PE, I think at one time when they built the junior high wing, there was discussion about a junior high gym in order to do that at Arthur Grade School. And that, I don't remember exactly what the estimated cost was, but it's probably at least in the $2 million range that it would take to do that. Class size, another issue that we struggle with, being in the 3 K-8 buildings. Projected 6th grade next year is 111, 7th grade 64. So that's a huge difference between those two grade levels. Just at Levington Grade School, there's 12 kids in the 6th grade, and I think maybe 13 in the 2nd grade, something like that. So it's very difficult to staff those types of classrooms, especially from year to year. So that's just a few of the challenges. Next slide, I think Brandon's going to hit a couple items.
Right now, what we're facing at the junior high next year is going to be looking to reduce our class offerings. Because of the equity, right now, currently in our buildings, we're offering a excuse me, not extracurriculars, but our elective classes, we will only offer next year, if we stay at the K-8 attendance or non-attendance center level, we will only offer our junior high students music, art, and computers. And you see those electives down below that we will look to cut, and those are, some of those are in different buildings. Shop at Arthur, culinary or home ec in a couple different buildings, creative writing at the LGS junior high, some enrichment and current events at Atwood. Those will all go to the wayside based upon staffing, class sizes, and overall equity, what we can provide for all of our junior high students. Because the high school wants all of our students to come in with the same knowledge and the same opportunity, those three classes at top, music, art, and computers, are the only ones that we can currently offer next year to all three buildings. We've put together some advantages that we might see going to attendance centers. Equal opportunities, again, that's going to continue to ring as we go through the presentation. Equal opportunities for all of our students in terms of the class offerings, class sizes, extracurriculars. So equal opportunity is something that we are striving to get to. Staff collaboration. During our SIP days currently, there's a lot of staff I see here, they understand that a lot of our SIP days, or our school improvement days, were spent traveling. And if we were in attendance centers or if we were in a group, we could spend that time much more wisely rather than transporting teachers around different counties, getting together and collaborating and using that time wisely. More consistent curriculum delivered. Again, with that staff collaboration, those teachers could be across the hallway from one another rather than across a county. So those staff could collaborate much more effectively and efficiently. As Mr. Schwengel alluded to, right now, class size is, as we're going to get to in a couple more slides, class sizes in different buildings are dramatically different. Like he alluded to, right now my 6th grade at Ludington has 12 students. My 7th grade has something like 33, 36. So every year we're seeing a dramatic fluctuation in our class sizes. So if we had the ability to have our centers, we would be able to space those groups out much more evenly. We're never looking to separate. So this, in what we've started 6 years ago with the first annexation and then 4 years ago with the second, obviously we're always looking to unify. Better use of resources, and that's use of teachers, that's use of space, that's use of, the materials that we have, and then possible extracurricular options. We've all had different thoughts and ideas at the junior high level of things we would like to offer our junior high students. Sometimes we're able to, sometimes we're not, based upon staff, based upon numbers, etc. The next slide talks about some of the concerns. Now, this is obviously not inclusive. There's others that I'm sure are out there. The number one, which I think a lot of us are concerned about, is transportation. The cost, which we will allude to later on in the slide, so I won't talk about the financials of the transportation. The time on the bus. Our goal and best practice states that we don't want to have any kid, no matter where they're coming from, no matter where they're going, we don't want any kid on a bus longer than an hour. That's just best practice. Start and end times, what time each school will start, which time they'll end. And then what do we do and how we deal with families that have children in multiple buildings.
This slide just kind of gives you an indication of what the projected enrollments are for next year. Shows each of the 3 buildings and then the total for that grade level. You go to the next slide. This is kind of where we're at as far as a proposal, just an idea of where the children might attend. The recommendation would be that there be a pre-K classrooms in each community as there is now. K2, kindergarten, first grade, and second grade students would attend Arthur Grade School. 3 through 5 would attend in Atwood, and 6 through 8 would attend in Lovington. the next 6 slides kind of go through building by building, kind of indicate like this, indicate how the classrooms could be used. And again, this is just a proposal. It also indicates like how many sections of first grade, second grade, and so forth. And once again, this is on the website. You can access this whole presentation on the website. If you look at slide 9 real quick. The 2 right-hand columns, evidence-based funding, class size, and then teachers needed. That just gives you an indication what the evidence indicates for the number of kids and types of kids, so to speak, that we have, what they would recommend for a class size, and then how many sections that would take. So that's simply based on evidence-based funding. The other sections are based on our current numbers. So that goes through K2 at Arthur. The next 2 slides are 3 through 5 at Atwood Hammond. And then the next 2 slides are 6 through 8 in Lovington. And the last slide talks a little bit more about transportation. Based on next year's rates for transportation and talking with Jim Miller, it's anticipated that switching to attendance centers would be an additional little over 103,000 miles, most likely. At our mileage rate, that comes up to $393,000. With the state's reimbursement now at 84%, that would reduce that cost to where it would actually be an additional almost $63,000 that would cost the district to switch to attendance centers and pick up that additional 100,000 miles. The extracurricular PE shuttles, that expense is based on last year's numbers. And PE shuttles wouldn't be needed. However, there would still be at least a minimal number of shuttles, most likely for junior high sports, if we still transporting kids to use the Atwood gym or an Arthur gym. And as Brandon mentioned, I mean, the expectation is that no child would have to be on the bus longer than an hour. And there's software programs and so forth that help you do routing. I've talked to Mr. Miller about that, and those are certain parameters that we would try to add in that program to determine how we could best transport the kids. I think it's indicated that give or take about 90% of the kids are on the bus now less than an hour. We do have some that are on there a little bit longer, but we do have a big district, 252 square miles. So our goal would be no more than an hour. And I think that as we go through that, as you know, it's going to change from year to year, but we would continue to strive to keep it at that 1 hour and tweak that as best we could. And there's most likely other options out there that could be considered from a transportation standpoint to try to limit that amount of time. So that's the start of transportation.
Well, that was a lot of information for everybody to take in. I know everyone has questions and comments. We'll go into the public comment section of our meeting. I'd like to remind everybody that public comments is on the back of the minutes. Everyone please follow along. Pay attention to those. So I'll open the floor up. The one thing I'd like to ask is someone wants to comment, or you probably have questions that won't be able to be answered tonight, or will need more detailed answers, and I would like to encourage everybody to submit those. We'll try to put those together, and we'll try to get answers for them.
I think one thing we can try to do is accumulate some of those questions and put kind of a question and answer on the website as well. So as we get more questions, we'll answer those questions and keep that updated as questions come in. I think that'll give everybody access whenever they need it.
I would just like to ask anybody that makes a comment or question, to please say your name first, because I'm not sure everybody knows who everybody is. I'll open it up.
My name's Jesse Burnett, and how are you guys going to address having kids in different towns, like on an emergency? Because I have quadruplets, so my quadruplets would end up being in, what was that? Jansen would be in Atwood, which is my third grader, and then the quadruplets would be in Arthur. So how would you guys address something like that if I had an emergency with one kid or the other? I mean, have you guys even thought about that?
I think in an emergency situation, and I think we probably do that now, I mean, we would try to assist in any way we can.
Okay.
I mean, I think we've had principals or even teachers transport kids out of necessity.
And the other thing that I'm concerned about is that you said something about the actual budget actually running into a deficit in the next couple of years without surplus spending. So how are you guys going to combat that?
Part of that, by switching to attendance centers, will save us some money. According to the evidence-based funding, right now, what they show is that we're overstaffed in certain areas.
Okay.
Part of that savings would come through attrition as teachers leave the district, retire, and then, you know, whether or not we reutilize those resources, but that's where some of the savings would come from.
So would any teachers end up losing their job as of right now?
As of right now, no.
Okay.
No. That's-
So we've got to count on somebody retiring in order to save money?
Yeah, just like we did through the annexation.
Right. Okay. So at first, we're not going to save money. We're going to be spending more money. And I get what you guys are trying to do here, and I'm not totally against it. I just want to make sure that we got all the facts here, because just like with any family, you got to come up with a budget and you got to stick with it. And we can't really count on the state of Illinois. So,
Very much so.
so when you say 84% reimbursement, it's like, when are we getting that money? So do we have to take out a loan, and then do we have the interest rate on the loan just to keep everything afloat?
Frankly, I
So-
wish Jim Miller just get a bus and we could all go to Springfield.
You don't need a bus, I brought my truck.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and speak. My name's Kenny Crossman. You say that 84% would be the reimbursement from the state. Can you give us an idea of what currently how the state's doing on bus transportation reimbursement?
Out of the 4 payments this year, we've received 1 so far.
Question. Do they have projections? Projections on when you're going to get paid? Or there's just an IOU bucket?
It's kind of like that a little bit, but I mean, we did eventually receive all of last year's payments,
Okay.
but we received 2 of those payments this year. So typically, we get them, they're just late.
All right.
I'm Josh Stack. My question on this got 2 of these kids on a bus. Eyes fluttered up, they go back and be on there for an hour, but they gotta come home. We're talking 2 hours a day. They're in the classroom 7.5 hours. Add the lunch, add the in-between time. These kids got a 10.5 hour work day, 5 days a week, which is more than 90% of the workforce in America. So we're talking about a second grader for a grown adult working. I'm trying to understand how this is beneficial for our children, put this stress on their mind, on their body, going forward. What is their drive to keep going? Put their best foot forward and keep it going by asking to do so more. I'm trying to figure this out. I was putting a kid on a bus 2 hours. If you're making them this long work week, 5 days a week, are we gonna come back and go to 4 days a week? No, we're not gonna do that. So I wanna know how this is beneficial for my kid to go through all that. And everybody's kid to go through that. Not just mine. And future kids to come. You guys keep looking at these, well, this is what we got coming next year and the year after, but you can't look at it 1 year on class sizes. It's gonna change, it's gonna fluctuate. We're a small town. We're not big city. If you wanna bus us around, oh, I gotta get them to go catch a bus to go to work. Yeah, these kids, they're second graders. First graders, you want to do this. Get up and catch a bus. Where do they live? Chicago? Where they going to work? No. We live in a small town. We want them to have a small town life. And you want to put them on a bus. All right. Thanks for listening.
Well, hey, I got a question real quick. So you did say that some of the bus routes do take over an hour now. So we're going to bus more kids, and then so how are you guys going to guarantee it's going to be an hour? I see the distance between all 3 towns, and it depends on which town you live in on how it's gonna be optimized. And then also you have to optimize that route in order for you ain't having buses pass each other and actually going over the same route. So, I mean, that would be something that would be interesting to see you guys putting a route up before we end up making a decision like this, in order to guarantee that. And I understand an hour and 5 minutes is a lot different than an hour and a half. So, and I understand where that gentleman's coming from over there. I went to Lovington. I moved there in 2010 because I wanted to get out of Decatur, and I found a nice house over there. So I wanted my kids to have the same life I had at Argenta, Oriana. Okay? And I thought Lovington was great and wonderful. We had a high school at the time, and then we lost the high school, not a big deal. But it's great just getting up in the morning and taking all 5 kids in my basically minibus, because I have a big van, to the school, versus now I'm going to have to think about where this one's going and the other 4 are going. So I totally understand that it would be better on the curriculum to a certain degree, but right now I have 2 kindergartners in one class and 2 kindergartners in another class, and do they ever bring home the same paper? No. Each teacher has their own flavor of teaching. So unless you have somebody going around and actually really sitting in the classroom and judging them each week, and I'm not saying either teacher's doing a bad job, it's just difference. So if you're trying to get everybody to end up teaching the same, I don't think that's exactly the answer in order to shove everybody in different buildings. I think maybe you might want to hire just one person going around critiquing everybody. So that's just a thought.
The idea back to transportation routes,
Yeah.
that's information we still have to work on.
You're right. And so I just hope that we do some more diligent working on this before you guys end up making a decision as a board.
Oh, absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? Because, I mean,
And I
if you see how many people are in here, this is crazy. It looks like there's a basketball game, like the regional championship outside. So it's a very concerning matter for every town. And I understand.
And I know when we first started talking about it, that was one of my first concerns, was transportation.
Man,
Because I live northwest of Arlington.
do you? So that's worse.
So, I don't have kids in school anymore, but I'd be worried about, being on a bus there.
Yeah, because we got some people that are almost to Dalton City.
Yeah, I know, yeah.
And then they got to go all the way to Atwood. I mean,
So that's,
and they got a nice building. I mean, all the facilities are nice in every town. It's not that. And all the teachers are good. It's not that. It's the transportation, because they got to spread over, what'd you say, 200? Yeah. So.
that's a big question.
Well, and I can touch on that a little bit. I mean, as far as transportation, I mean, I lived a couple miles from school growing up, and we had 1 month, you had about an hour ride because you were on the long route, and then the next month you were close, then you had the short route, but those are all things that obviously we'd have to look at.
Okay.
I'm Samantha Binion. I have 2 different questions. One is, has the district considered rezoning so that maybe kids from the central area that are already in the rural town, maybe some go more towards Atwood and Lovington to increase the numbers in the districts and lower it here in Arthur?
No, I don't think it's ever been brought up.
I think the idea is the consistency in instruction is a big driving force in that. And then, part of this, there is a financial aspect of it as well.
Okay. And then my other question is, I have 5 kids that will go to 4 different schools in 3 different towns. What does the time, like, will our day be shortened? Will I be bringing all 5 kids to their bus at 5 different times or 4 different times? Because, like, will the buses be leaving at different times? Will they be arriving at different times? How will the school day work? The timing?
Part of that will depend on what method of transportation we end up with.
Okay.
One thought now is to bring all the kids into a central location and then send them out. There may be other ways around that, but that's what we still have to study to find out how that will play out.
So then when they come back, will they just wait there for everyone to return to their hub or?
Yeah, I mean, they
school?
kind of do that now. So I think Jim, at the high school, they come here and wait and catch a different bus.
High schools, I don't know, it's maybe a little different than a 5-year-old. Will there be staffing there to stay with the children until they're all
Oh, absolutely.
off of one bus, put back on another, and?
Yep. They will be supervised.
Ashley Gendrich. I have a kindergartner, so I'm not completely up to date on how grade school extracurriculars and sports work. But I did have a question. With Pee Wee basketball and that kind of stuff, is it consolidated now, or do each grade school do their own, like T-ball and Pee Wee basketball and all of that? Or would those be consolidated once?
That, currently those, the Arthur Lovington Atwood Hammond Youth League, is consolidated, in my understanding. They run right now, they run 5th and 6th, girls basketball, boys basketball, and girls volleyball together, as communities. The Pee Wee basketball, Atwood is separate and Arthur and Lovington is together on the Pee Wee. Now, obviously, that's up to the communities because the schools don't run that.
Okay. So those wouldn't be restructured with this? Because I was going to ask how practices and stuff would work then, if they would be at their respective buildings moved with the school, with the grades, or if they would be still where they're currently held.
It's a possibility with an open gym, let's say in the 3 through 5 building, that it could be organized to have them stay at the school and have a practice at that time as well. But that would have to work out through our school, through the school and the Arthur Lovington Atwood Hammond Youth League. So.
And then would somebody be able to highlight a little more detail on how the curriculum is not across the board right now? Why that seems to be a concern?
There you go. Yeah. Can I talk about that? I've got 4 daughters. This consolidation, and my last one's a freshman right now. So this reorganization is not going to affect my kids, but I can tell you that the way we're doing it now doesn't work. I've been up till midnight, 2 o'clock in the morning, studying with girls in math because we don't have the same curriculum. Kids have straight A's in Lovington, and they come here, and they can't even pass basic math questions. So what we're doing right now, I know everybody's worried about busing. My kids ride the bus for 45 minutes to an hour. It's not been, they throw spitballs at each other, they have a good time. It's not a job. They enjoy themselves on the bus. But what we're doing right now is not working. So everybody needs to have an open mind and try and work with everybody on this. So from my experience, my oldest daughter ended up being valedictorian in her senior class, but she struggled transferring out of the Lovington High School into Arthur. So I don't know where the numbers are at and how each individual school is scoring, but in my opinion, Lovington is below Arthur. And I think that's because the curriculum's not in line. That's just what I've seen.
I think it's an ongoing process.
Well, actually, that was going to be another thing, is if that is an issue, your kids are older. So is this something that now that we are consolidated will work itself out over time, that the curriculums become more stable from before when we were individual districts?
We're in the 4th year of the process. I would say I wish we were farther along, but it is, with 3 buildings, it is a difficult process. You have a building principal over, 8, 9 grade levels basically, and to be in the classroom and then 3 different buildings trying to keep that consistent. It's a difficult situation. It would be easier, it would be more effective, more efficient, I think, if all 5th graders were in the same hallway, all 5th grade teachers. I think you would have that collaborative effort from all the teachers. Research indicates that's how that works.
I have seen that in the research I've done.
It's just difficult for us to get to that point because of how big we are.
I think he's been waiting back there for some time.
Danny Moss, I have a block out the front door. Who's in charge of the curriculum currently? Is it the individual administrators within each building, or who oversees curriculum and the continuity of curriculum as it stands now? So who's responsible for making sure that 5th grade here and 5th grade Lovington and 5th grade Atwood are doing the same thing? On 3 reaching the same goals and expectations through testing.
Basically, we do that as an administrative team. The building principal is the instructional leader of their building. And then they work with obviously the teachers in each building.
What is the process for this? Is it lesson plans? How do you, as the administrator in that building, ensure that you are getting the same curriculum development throughout?
Well, I know in my building,
So that's the problem. Shouldn't be every
Right.
building, in every building we do this?
Yep.
Okay, well, I'm sorry. Chris.
Okay, I know we talk about it at an admin meeting, and we'll converse and we'll go back to our buildings. That's where I was getting to in my building. I go back to the admin meeting. And we talk there, and I present it to them, you know, and we are all on the same page in our meetings, and I present it back to them. But just like he said over here, each teacher does have their different style.
Sure.
So I can submit it back to a teacher, and I guess I expect that teacher to take it back to the room and do what we've asked to do. But with all these different styles going on in a K-8 building, I can't spend a week in 5th grade to make sure what I just told them Monday is being done consistently throughout all 3 buildings. Because I'm spreading myself throughout.
Don't we have different schools?
We also have set curriculum in reading and math that we use, and our grade levels meet about those curriculums. So if, for example, a teacher doesn't go back and use that curriculum when they've been told by their administration, I mean, we get lesson plans for them, we're being told that's what's happening. So if it's, I mean, we're in the classroom as much as possible, but we do have that curriculum that our district does use.
If that's happening, why do you have somebody that their kids come out of Lovington or so far behind the
Yes.
Yeah.
If everybody's doing their jobs and the checks and balances are
In
being
all
followed.
honesty, you're not dealing with the same demographics in every community.
Well, wouldn't you say?
I completely understand what you're
You're
saying.
dealing with different levels of free and reduced, you're dealing with different levels of title.
So how will putting them all in the same building fix that? You still have those
I think you're
kids in that building.
gonna utilize staff more efficiently.
I don't think you
We're gonna
can fix
have
a.
more specialized
Sorry.
staff, utilize it more efficiently so we can target our deficiencies and at the same time offer enrichment to our kids.
But we'll reduce staff to do that, and that's how we'll save
I
them.
don't think we've talked about reducing
That's
staff.
exactly what you just said. Through attrition, we're not gonna fire anybody. That's through attrition, that's what we reduce.
To attrition, our staffing numbers would be based on what the evidence-based funding indicates.
So you'll hire more teachers
No,
than if,
So if we're overstaffed,
if you look at the numbers on the charts, it'll show you.
okay, I haven't.
How that plays out.
That's my fault. I haven't-
The one chart only had one teacher less out of the 3 charts. I think out of the one slide I really looked at. Can you go back? Yeah. Okay, this one.
Here, there's 2 left. There, one less there.
While you're looking for that, I'll throw out an easy one. Does the transfer time count in the busing time? The time that the kid spends in one building waiting to get on the next bus and go to the next building? Are you factoring into that bus time, or is it just the time that they're
I
actually?
mean, it's when they're picked up at their house, but, you know.
But if we're gonna, in the one plan, let's say where the kids here would go to the gym, the grade school gym, the wait, get picked up, and then go to Washington, or however that worked out, are you counting that transferring over for the other bus, or if that system?
I mean, it's total time on the bus.
So the time in the building, the 10 minutes they spend in the building waiting to get on the next bus would not be counted. So then your hour goes to an hour, 10 minutes, or an hour, 15 minutes.
The first part of the route, and then how long they've been on it to get to there. So that's how we figure
I didn't hear that.
I mean, it's when they get picked up on the bus and when they get dropped off at school. That's the idea.
Okay.
So is the idea then you just still drop them off at the town hub? So everybody still have to take them to the town hub? Each town's hub? Like it's like Grand Central Station, so like the Lovington School would be the hub for all the kids that go to either Atwood or Arthur, right?
If we go with the method where kids would come to.
Because that's the only way it's gonna work.
Switch buses
If you're
that
gonna
are
have to go from house to house, that's never gonna work, so.
And then are the
We won't-
teachers responsible
They won't
for
pick up house to house
Right.
in town.
before
Right.
school, coming in an hour early to like man these hubs?
Sorry.
Who's gonna be responsible for like, if the kids are there an hour before to get bussed out, like, do the teachers have to come in and do these extra duties, or? I know all the aides already
You're limited
have-
to your 7 hours and 45 minutes, so if it goes beyond that, then there'll be people that are paid.
Okay.
Yet our kids
For
are
that
running
time.
9 and 10-hour days with that. By the way, my name's Katie. To go with the gentleman's question here, you said that you have a hard time controlling or supervising what is implemented from one school to next after your meetings. Now, I assume that by the time we divide up into our schools, there's gonna be multiple kindergarten teachers, multiple first grade teachers, because our class sizes are gonna be big enough that we need multiple. How do you plan on regulating the differences between what teachers are teaching when you can't do it now in your own buildings to unit with all 3 districts?
Yeah, you can do it now.
Yeah, you can't do it right now while they're in the same hallways with each other to unify within the 3 districts or even across the hall. But you want to divide up all,
I think there's
I
a
don't
difference
understand.
between working with 3 grade levels instead of 8 or.
but you can't do it among your teachers between the 2. So how does that unify the kids? And
It
then
is
that
being done, it is being done. It may not be to the level that we want it to be yet.
So all-
It's like I said earlier, it's a work in progress. I mean, we're always striving to try to do things better.
And the idea of that, to in turn, goes to, I have 5 kids, 4 of which will now go into all schools.
No.
So how, as a parent, how can you reassure me that this is a good move when I have kids in 3 different schools, 3 different towns? What benefit?
safe on that bus too.
Right. I mean, and my kids are little. I also have a child with disability, so if there is weather emergencies, if there's other things, as a parent, I schedule doctor's appointments together, so I can multitask to be as efficient as I can. So now I have to increase my travel time to 3 different towns?
You're not alone on that.
Yep.
How can you reassure me as a parent with multiple kids that that's a good idea? You might unify my kids grow up going to school together.
Are you gonna reimburse people for gas and mileage and having to travel 12 miles to school? Because, I mean, that's costing us more too. Because my kid is on the bus my kid rode the bus. I take my kid because my kid is on the bus for at least 45, 50 minutes in the morning and in the afternoon. So that's a long day for a kindergartner after they're at school all day. Like he was saying, you know, my kid's there 10 some hours, and then like the high schoolers, their day's not even as long as my kindergartner's day is. So I take them to school. So what's gonna, and you can't tell me that the way you're structuring it, however, let's say you met at 7:30 at the school instead of 7:45 or whatever time the bus drops them off. There's another 15 minutes out of my kid's day in the morning and another 15 in the afternoon. So there's another half hour. I mean, you're just making it really longer. And like you said, I don't think you're thinking about these little kids. And what about the adjustment from a pre-K kid who's used to their school, and then you're gonna ship them 12 miles away from their kid, they're gonna go all day to a new school that they don't even know, and kids, I mean, who knows how many kids will even have in their class from their pre-K to begin with. I mean, that's a lot of stress on a kid that age. Have you guys thought about that, or? And then going along what she was saying, I mean, you're spending time in the classrooms, you're still gonna have 15 classrooms if you have 5 per grade. You're gonna still have 15 classrooms. I understand there's K through 8 or whatever, but how many classrooms is that? I mean, you've probably got 15 or less in there now. So I mean, that you're gonna have the same amount of classrooms to sit there and go from classroom to classroom. Just because they're the same grade doesn't mean, I mean, every teacher teaches different, I'm sure. And that's understandable. But I mean, to say that it's
it's gonna be easier to manage because you'll be able to go from classroom to classroom. Well, I mean, you're gonna have the same amount of classrooms, so I don't see a difference there. But I just don't think you guys are, thinking about the stress on these little kids that this is gonna give them, especially those going from pre-K to kindergarten.
Well, it's not even just that. Think about, you're eating when you get home, the kids get home from school, they're hungry. And then they've got homework, and not eat homework. So now you're taking out an hour in the evening. Are you gonna lessen that homework and that load, because you've got laundry and dishes and
Dinner, baths,
right?
bedtime.
You're taking away more time from that.
We're gonna have to go to bed earlier, you gotta get up earlier.
Kids are allowed to play. I mean, that's what they need to do is go outside.
Andy?
Andy, you got anything else?
Go ahead, Nate.
Mitch Fleming, I'm an Atwood resident and a current school administrator in the district. And first of all, I want to thank administrators and teachers that are in the room for the work that you have done on curriculum writing. I've been through it as a teacher, I've been through it as an administrator. I know it's hard, grueling work, it takes a lot of time. Having said that, it's been 4 years, correct, since Atwood Hammond came into the district. With the work that's been done, is there a fully aligned kindergarten through 12th grade curriculum in place, on paper, that staff members in the various buildings can refer to?
Our English, language arts, or math, or science, everybody.
Speak up so we can hear you.
English, language arts, science, math, K through 8 is consistent.
Is it on paper, is it in a file cabinet, is it electronic?
Everybody, they could probably tell you more about it, but yes,
So-
it's available to all those teachers.
Can I just ask, what was the process over the past 4 years of, essentially we had Common Core, which became the new Illinois Learning Standards, and so on and so forth. What was the process once those standards came to be? What was the process that the district took in getting that fully aligned curriculum across the district together?
I can speak as a teacher who was in that process and as an administrator now. But we used a lot of our SIP days to meet with the groups and align our curriculum that way. We did a lot of pacing guides. Recently, this is the first year we've implemented the science program in its 3rd through 8th grade. And it's been implementing very well throughout. And our English, I know K through 5 has been a web-based curriculum. And so we have our pacing guide on there. And again, we use a lot of that time that we can get together on SIP days to collaborate and bring what each classroom is doing and try to align it that way. So we're all given the same materials, but the things that
Now, or do each grade school do their own, like T-ball and Pee-wee basketball and all of that? Or would those be consolidated once?
Yeah, currently those, the Arthur Atwood Hammond Youth League is consolidated, in my understanding. They run right now, they run 5th and 6th girls basketball, boys basketball, and girls volleyball together as communities. The Pee-wee basketball, Atwood is separate and Arthur and Lovington is together on the Pee-wee. Now, obviously, that's up to the communities because the schools don't run that.
Okay. So those wouldn't be restructured with this? Because I was going to ask how practices and stuff would work then, if they would be at their respective buildings moved with the school, with the grades, or if they would be still where they're currently held.
It's a possibility with an open gym, let's say in the 3 through 5 building, that it could be organized to have them stay at the school and have a practice at that time as well. But that would have to work out through our school, through the school and the Arthur Lovington Atwood Hammond Youth League. So.
And then would somebody be able to highlight a little more detail on how the curriculum is not across the board right now? Why that seems to be a concern?
There you go. Yeah. Can I talk about that? I've got 4 daughters
And I can tell you that the way we're doing it now doesn't work. I've been up till midnight, 2 o'clock in the morning, studying with girls in math because we don't have the same curriculum. Kids have straight A's in Lovington, and they come here, and they can't even pass basic math questions. So what we're doing right now, I know everybody's worried about busing. My kids ride the bus for 45 minutes to an hour. It's not been, I mean, they throw spitballs at each other, they have a good time. It's not a job. They enjoy themselves on the bus. But what we're doing right now is not working. So everybody needs to have an open mind and try and work with everybody on this. So from my experience, my oldest daughter ended up being valedictorian for senior class, but she struggled transferring out of the Lovington High School into Arthur. So I don't know where the numbers are at and how each individual school is scoring, but in my opinion, Lovington is below Arthur. And I think that's because the curriculum's not in line. That's just what I've seen.
I think it's an ongoing process.
Well, actually, that was going to be another thing, is if that is an issue, your kids are older. So is this something that now that we are consolidated will work itself out over time, that the curriculums become more stable from before when we were individual districts?
We're in the 4th year of the process.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I would say I wish we were farther along, but it is, you know, with 3 buildings, it is a difficult process. You have a building principal over, 8, 9 grade levels basically, and to be in the classroom and then 3 different buildings, trying to keep that consistent. It's a difficult situation. It would be easier, it would be more effective, more efficient, I think, if all 5th graders were in the same hallway, all 5th grade teachers. I think that you would have that collaborative effort from all the teachers. I mean, research indicates that's how that works.
I have seen that in the research I've done.
It's just difficult for us to get to that point because of how big we are.
I think he's been waiting back there for some time.
Danny Moss, here Arthur. I have a block out the front door. Who's in charge of the curriculum currently? Is it the individual administrators within each building, or who oversees curriculum and the continuity of curriculum as it stands now? So who's responsible for making sure that 5th grade here and 5th grade Lovington and 5th grade Atwood are doing the same thing? Are reaching the same goals and expectations through testing?
Basically, we do that as an administrative team. The building principal is the instructional leader of their building, and then they work with obviously the teachers in each building.
What is the process to this? Is it lesson plans? How do you, as the administrator in that building, ensure that you are getting the same curriculum development throughout?
Well, I know in my building,
Well, that's the problem. Shouldn't be every
Right.
building, in every building we do this?
Yep.
Okay, well, I'm sorry, Chris, before you
I know we talk about it at an admin meeting, and we'll converse and we'll go back to our buildings. That's where I was getting to in my building. I go back to the admin meeting. And we talk there, and I present it to them, you know, and we are all on the same page at our meetings, and I present it back to them. But just like he said over here, each teacher does have their different style.
Sure.
So I can submit it back to a teacher, and I guess I expect that teacher to take it back to the room and do what we've asked to do. But with all these different styles going on in a K-8 building, I can't spend a week in 5th grade to make sure what I've just told them Monday is being done consistently throughout all 3 buildings. Because I'm spreading myself throughout.
Don't we have assistant principals?
We also have set curriculum in reading and math that we use, and our grade levels meet about those curriculums. So if, for example, a teacher doesn't go back and use that curriculum when they've been told by their administration, I mean, we get lesson plans for them, we're being told that's what's happening. So if it's, I mean, we're in the classroom as much as possible, but we do have set curriculum that our district does use.
If that's happening, why do you have somebody that their kids come out of Lovington or so far behind the
Yes.
Yeah.
If everybody's doing their jobs and the checks and balances are
In
being followed.
all honesty, you're not dealing with the same demographics in every community.
Well, wouldn't you say?
I completely understand what you're
You're
saying.
dealing with different levels of free and reduced, you're dealing with different levels of title.
So how will putting them all in the same building fix that? You still have those
I think
kids
you're
in that
gonna,
building.
I think you're gonna utilize staff more efficiently.
I don't
You're
think you
gonna
can
have
fix
more
a.
specialized
Sorry.
staff, utilize it more efficiently so we can target our deficiencies. And at the same time, offer enrichment to our kids.
But we'll reduce staff to do that, and that's how we'll save
I don't think we've talked about reducing
That's
staff.
exactly what you said.
Not
Through attrition, we're not gonna fire anybody, that's through attrition, that's what we reduce.
To attrition, our staffing numbers would be based on what the evidence-based funding indicates.
So you'll hire more teachers
No.
than if,
So if we're overstaffed,
If you look at the numbers on the charts, it'll show you
okay, I haven't.
how that plays out.
That's my fault. I haven't
The
looked
one
at it.
chart only had one teacher less out of the 3 charts. I think, out of the one slide I really looked at. Can you go back? Yeah. Okay, this one.
Here, there's 2 less. There's 1 less there.
While you're looking for that, I'll throw out an easy one. Does the transfer time count in the busing time? The time that the kid spends in one building waiting to get on the next bus and go to the next building? Does that, are you factoring into that bus time, or is it just the time that they're
I
actually?
mean, it's when they're picked up at their house, but, you know.
But if we're gonna, in the one plan, let's say where the kids here would go to the gym, the grade school gym, the way and get picked up and then go to Lexington, or however that worked out, are you counting that transferring over for the other bus, or if that is?
I mean, it's total time on the bus.
So the time in the building, the 10 minutes they spend in the building waiting to get on the next bus would not be counted. So then your hour goes to an hour, 10 minutes, or an hour, 15 minutes.
The first part of the route, and then how long they've been on it to get to that. So that's how we figure
I didn't hear that.
I mean, it's when they get picked up on the bus or when they get dropped off at school. That's the idea.
Okay.
So is the idea then you just still drop them off at the town hub? So everybody still have to take them to the town hub? Each town's hub? Like it's like Grand Central Station, so like the Lovington School would be the hub for all the kids that go to either Atwood or Arthur, right?
We go with the method where kids will come to.
Because that's the only way it's going to work.
Switch buses
If you're
that are
going to have to go from house to house, that's never going to work. So.
And then are the
We won't-
teachers responsible
They will
Right.
pick up house to house
Right.
in town.
before
Right.
school, coming in an hour early to like man these hubs?
Sorry.
Who's gonna be responsible for like, if the kids are there an hour before to get bussed out, like, do the teachers have to come in and do these extra duties, or? I know all the aides already
You're limited
have-
to your 7 hours and 45 minutes, so if it goes beyond that, then there'll be people that are paid.
Okay.
you know, kids are running 9 and 10 hour days with that. By the way, mine's Katie. To go with the gentleman's question here, you said that you have a hard time controlling or supervising what is implemented from one school to next after your meetings. Now, I assume that by the time we divide up into our schools, there's gonna be multiple kindergarten teachers, multiple first grade teachers, because our class sizes are gonna be big enough that we need multiple. How do you plan on regulating the differences between what teachers are teaching when you can't do it now in your own buildings to unit with all 3 districts? Yeah, you can't do it right now while they're in the same hallways with each other to unify within the 3 districts or even across the hall. But you want to divide up all,
I think there's
I
a
don't
difference
understand.
between working with 3 grade levels instead of 8 or.
but you can't do it among your teachers between the 2. So how does that unify the kids? And
It
then
is
that
being
means-
done, it is being done. It may not be to the level that we want it to be yet.
So all-
It's like I said earlier, it's a work in progress. I mean, we're always striving to try to do things better.
And the idea of that, to in turn, goes to, I have 5 kids, 4 of which will now go into all schools.
No,
So how, as a
is it
parent,
blinking?
how can you reassure me that this is a good move when I have kids in 3 different schools, 3 different towns? What benefit?
safe on that bus too.
Right. I mean, and my kids are little. I also have a child with disabilities, so if there is weather emergencies, if there's other things, as a parent, I schedule doctor's appointments together, so I can multitask to be as efficient as I can. So now I have to increase my travel time to 3 different towns?
You're not alone on that.
Yep.
How can you reassure me as a parent with multiple kids that that's a good idea? You might unify but I mean, my kids grow up going to school together.
Are you gonna reimburse people for gas and mileage that has to travel 12 miles to school? Because, I mean, that's costing us more too. Because my kid is on the bus if my kid rode the bus, I take my kid because my kid is on the bus for at least 45, 50 minutes in the morning and in the afternoon. So that's a long day for a kindergartner after they're at school all day. Like he was saying, you know, my kid's there 10 some hours, and then like the high schoolers, their day's not even as long as my kindergartner's day is. So I take them to school. So what's gonna, and you can't tell me that the way you're structuring it, however, let's say you met at 7:30 at the school instead of 7:45 or whatever time the bus drops them off. There's another 15 minutes out of my kid's day in the morning and another 15 in the afternoon. So there's another half hour. I mean, you're just making it really longer. And like you said, I don't think you're thinking about these little kids. And what about the adjustment from a pre-K kid who's used to their school, and then you're gonna ship them 12 miles away from their kid. They're gonna go all day to new schools that they don't even know, and kids, I mean, who knows how many kids will even have in their class from their pre-K to begin with. I mean, that's a lot of stress on a kid that age. Have you guys thought about that, or? And then going along what she was saying, I mean, you're spending time in the classrooms. You're still going to have 15 classrooms if you have 5 per grade. You're going to still have 15 classrooms. I understand there's K through 8 or whatever, but how many classrooms is that? I mean, you've probably got 15 or less in there now. So, I mean, that you're going to have the same amount of classrooms to sit there and go from classroom to classroom. Just because they're the same grade doesn't mean, I mean, every teacher teaches different, I'm sure. And that's understandable. But, I mean, to say that it's going to be easier to manage because you'll be able to go from classroom to classroom, well, I mean, you're going to have the same amount of classrooms, so I don't see a difference there. But I just don't think you guys are, you know, thinking about the stress on these little kids that this is going to get them, especially those going from pre-K to kindergarten.
Well, it's not even just that. Think about, you know, you're eating when you get home, the kids get home from school, they're hungry. And then they've got homework, and I need homework. So now you're taking out an hour in the evening. Are you gonna lessen that homework and that load, because you got laundry and dishes and
dinner, baths,
right?
bedtime.
And you're taking away more time from that.
We're gonna have to go to bed earlier, you gotta get up earlier.
Kids are allowed to play. I mean, that's what they need to do, is go outside and. Andy, you got anything else?
Go ahead, Nate.
Mitch Fleming, I'm an Atwood resident and a current school administrator in the district. And first of all, I want to thank administrators and teachers that are in the room for the work that you have done on curriculum writing. I've been through it as a teacher, I've been through it as an administrator. I know it's hard, grueling work, it takes a lot of time. Having said that, it's been 4 years, correct, since Atwood Hammond came into the district. With the work that's been done, is there a fully aligned kindergarten through 12th grade curriculum in place, on paper, that staff members in the various buildings can refer to?
Our English, language arts, our math, our science, everybody.
Speak up so we can hear you.
English, language arts, science, math, K through 8 is consistent.
Is it on paper? Is it in a file cabinet? Is it electronic?
Everybody, I mean, they can probably tell you more about it, but yes,
So-
it's available to all those teachers.
Can I just ask, what was the process over the past 4 years of, you know, essentially we had Common Core, which became the new Illinois Learning Standards, and so on and so forth. What was the process once those standards came to be that the district took in getting that fully aligned curriculum across the district together?
I can speak as a teacher who was in that process and as an administrator now. But we used a lot of our SIP days to meet with the groups and align our curriculum that way. We did a lot of pacing guides. We've recently, like, this is the first year we've implemented the science program in its 3rd through 8th grade. And it's been implementing very well throughout. And our English, I know K through 5 has been a web-based curriculum. And so we have our pacing guide on there. And again, we use a lot of that time that we can get together on SIP days to collaborate and bring what each classroom is doing and try to align it that way. So we're all given the same materials, but the things that we're looking at aligning are the grading systems, the little things in the classroom that, you know, why are these kids coming and not prepared for high school in this area, but these kids are leaving this building and they're prepared. I mean, those are the things that on SIP days, we really try to get together and try to have our teachers work together and figure that out. But there's a catch in there somewhere that we're trying to figure out. That's why it's ongoing.
So you'd say you're struggling with the collaborative piece, obviously. Has there been any attempt, I know I'm looking at someone that has a lot of technological expertise. Has there been any attempts to utilize, I know the school uses the Google Suite. There's a feature called Google Hangouts. Mr. Stone referenced travel times. I know that there could be collaborative meetings between grade levels on a laptop without having to travel travel to 5 minutes from Atwood to Arthur or from Lovington to Arthur to meet with your team. Have any of those strategies been implemented as far as utilizing the technological tools we have in the world today to build upon or make it better?
I'll speak on the technology side of it. With Google, with our Google accounts, we do have our content areas that have set up team drives through Google now and are sharing the resources through the team drive, so everybody has access to different activities, supplemental activities that they use in their classrooms. So we have utilized that technology part of it.
And I have one final question that has nothing to do with curriculum. As far as the structural portions of the building, and this is going to sound like a silly question, bathrooms, when you send, I don't know the answer, I'm just asking, but when you send 6th through 8th graders to a building in Lovington, I've never been in that building, but are all the bathrooms set up for 6th through 8th graders, or do you have bathrooms in there that are designed specifically for smaller children? I know specifically one wing of our elementary building, in the Atwood building, which would become the 3-5 building, the sinks are lower, I believe the toilet seats are lower, and now we're gonna be sending older students in there. I'm just trying to think of additional things that might cost money to have to upgrade or change. I don't know if any of those have been thought about or not. It was one of the things I came across when I was researching attendance. So I'm just curious to know if that had been considered. Thank you.
That was my next question, so.
Hey, can you say it again? Say your question again, because I forgot.
We can theorize on, you know, it sounds good that curriculum will be better if you put everybody in the same building. I mean, on paper, that makes sense. Bus times, whatever, all that is kind of theoretical at the moment. The numbers are the numbers. So you talked about attrition replacing the transportation costs, and what does that look like on, you know, that's still a projection too. You can speculate who's going to retire and who's not over the next few years, and some people put it in writing ahead of time, but numbers-wise, let's say the curriculum does get better and the transportation isn't an issue, do the numbers work? Does it make sense? You know, is it fiscally responsible that way? Does it really, you know, we can say that the drive is for better curriculum and better education for our kids, which I don't think anybody in here will argue against wanting that for their children. And then I realize that all of you up there have that responsibility to give us that and still be fiscally responsible with the money that is given, you know, to run the school. So that the numbers make sense that way.
Yes, I mean, on the surface, it makes sense. I mean, there's been numerous school districts that have done this.
So, I mean, could you show us the numbers? Like, show us an actual spreadsheet, I mean, profit loss statement?
Well, I mean, if you go through the numbers that are on the
No, a profit loss statement on the school.
profit loss statement.
Well, if you're running in the red or you're running in the black, it's just like a business.
Yeah.
I mean, right, Andy?
We're getting
We're
ready
just-
to be running, using deficit spending, correct? If we continue on the path.
It's what he said, yeah.
We'll be in deficit spending, which obviously, and this is the
That-
possible solution to that, and we're still in the talking about it today.
It's not necessarily the solution.
No,
It's
it's
gonna
a
fix our
possible-
financial
possible
problem, but it's one of the solutions.
Absolutely.
And there's other aspects to that besides financial, which I indicated earlier, the academic part.
I think if everybody can get a better education for their kids, we're all on board.
But if you look at the numbers with the enrollment that we have, it indicates that we're overstaffed. Based on the evidence-based funding, you know, what they expect for a class size, if you use that number for those classes, you know, 6 to 8 staff members is $250,000. Can we get rid of 6 or 8? No. But we could probably repurpose some of those teachers in other roles, like an instructional coach, which the evidence shows is an excellent instructional option. So, I mean, it's trying to use our resources the best we can, the best meet the needs of all the kids. You know, this isn't gonna fix everything.
I agree completely. What are the other options on the table currently besides attendance centers to fix, you know, if the attendance center isn't what you decide is best, what are the other options for exploring currently?
For what?
For fixing the curriculum.
Fix the problem that we're fixing with attendance centers.
Without attendance centers?
Yeah, if attendance centers turn out not to be the best option,
We're gonna have to
whatever
determine-
myriad of reasons.
We're gonna have to determine a way to increase revenue somehow.
But they're already.
So there's no other options currently being explored other than attendance centers.
We have to build a gym? I mean, I don't know.
What do you need to
But
build a gym?
that's what you're supposed to know.
What do you need to build a gym for?
Right.
I mean, what gym are you building? The one at the?
Arthur Grade School.
So-
That was the option.
So.
Well, we tore down a gym in Lovington.
If you need to build a gym, what gym would?
We tore down a great gym in Lovington.
That's not part of the discussion.
Well, I know that, but
Okay?
They don't get the use of a gym?
Could you restate that?
Yeah, I'm sorry. You said Arthur, I'm from Atwood, don't know Arthur.
Part of the problem is that we're bringing Arthur Junior High students to the high school, and the high school needs both gyms.
Why are you bringing kids to the high school?
Because they have so many sections at Arthur Grade School that they can't get gym every day all for the right period. So they're bringing them over here to use one of our facilities.
We have over 400 students in our
In
school.
your
We
school.
have also the smallest gym, and even for large kids, junior high kid size, no locker room, all that, so we come over here 2 periods a day.
So what would be your enrollment as far as the 400 students you say? What would that enrollment be with the K through 2? Because that's where, what would that total enrollment be? And with that, maybe it's been on a slide and I missed it, but what kind of class sizes are we looking at? The 20, we would go from, well,
Right from 18 to 20 and 17 to 20.
but if we have 5 in classes? You said we have classrooms of 5 kids?
No.
5 teachers.
5 teachers, okay, I apologize. So we have 17 students. And so what would, our total enrollment would be
Around
250?
250.
And there's enough room in the gym to do that, there would be no
Well,
need for,
grade school, yes.
for the grade school?
Yeah.
JJ Carter, she had a good point from the Hammond situation. Have we got any other options? Because we've bused 2 full buses from Hammond to school. And it's about the same distance from Hammond to Lovington. Lovington's down on numbers. We need a junior high gymnasium. If we price a gymnasium we built in Lovington, they're low numbers anyway. Give them another gym. We're not busing boys and girls, junior high sports from Lovington to Atwood, because this year we're playing boys here and girls there. We're in the same gymnasium, at the same school. If you're going to do a consolidation, leave the little kids in their school, K through 5, put 6 through 8 in Lovington and live with it. Best scenario. And make administration hold people accountable to do their job. If not, you fire them. Everybody else gets, you go to a factory, you're a factory worker or whatever, you don't do your job, You get told once, maybe twice, third time you're going.
So what are you proposing, that K through 5 stay in each town?
Something like that, or another option. This is the only option we're saying.
I know.
You asked two questions, there's not anything else on the table.
Well,
We
as-
just don't think we need to do this. We just spent millions of dollars to build a new junior high school here. And we're gonna fill that with a pre-K through 2 school? I mean, and we need 2 gymnasiums at 1 facility for our junior high sports program.
That,
You're gonna play boys and girls.
Totally
So we're
agree.
gonna bus them somewhere, and then bus half of them kids back to another town. And then parents gotta chase them where they're going from year to year, and what time they're gonna be out. That's my point. I wish there was more options than just this that our board can have and choose from. Instead of
Well-
being, this is what you're getting fed, are we gonna do it or not?
So the main problem is our budget, but in the future, the state's been talking quietly for years about doing county schools. So is this a temporary fix for the situation, or for our budget situation? Because state just keeps paying less and less. So in the future, if the state pushes for county schools, what would the attendance centers
I
help
don't-
us try to avoid that?
I wouldn't anticipate that ever happening.
Really?
They've
Okay.
tried, they've had those discussions before, and, you know, it's never materialized.
We didn't hear the question back here.
Oh, I'm sorry. The attendance center point is to try and help us with our budget is part of this discussion tonight. I was asking, with the state paying less and less every year, is this a temporary fix, or will this help us fix long-term? Or would the state make us go to county schools? But he said county schools are not going to be a thing.
I have a question, a couple questions.
yeah,
The first thing is, part of the issue I am hearing is of the gyms. And is it for PE or for extracurricular activities or both? PE mainly? And it's only the junior high right now that's having issues because they have to come to the high school? Have we, Illinois, don't they have a waiver for if you do not have the facility room, that you can apply for a waiver and you can not have PE every day? I know that wouldn't be a great answer, but if, you know, for 2-3 years in junior high, you weren't able to have the PE every day, I think that would be an option. Has that been done? Has that been done?
That's what we're looking at, is possibly 3 days of PE.
Okay.
If we don't go, like even next year, possibly.
Well, wouldn't that be a simpler solution than switching everybody's schools around? Wouldn't that be something to look at when multiple people
We're looking
ask
to
what
that for
other
the
options
CD.
are we looking at, and nobody's answered the question. They said this was it. So if that was an option, then I would appreciate it that if that would have been mentioned, that was a possibility.
We put that up on the slide. And
Okay, I wasn't here.
Okay.
And then the second thing is the curriculum is obviously driving a lot of this. And so right now, if I walked, and I might have missed this, so I'm sorry if I did, if I walked into a 3rd grade classroom at every single school, would they be on the same page? Would they be relatively within a week or 2 of each other? And why? Because we have FaceTimes, we have virtual meetings, we have the Google Drives, and there's no reason that I would think if people can't physically make it into a classroom, that people cannot check online and see what they're supposed to be. I understand it's a working, breathing document, and it would have to be flexible for, you know, everybody's abilities, and, you know, one class might be getting stuck on a point that another one doesn't, but why don't we already have that place for the subjects that we claim are on the same curriculum, because they're not. If you can't go into 3 different classrooms and they're roughly in the same place, then they're not in the same curriculum.
And I have a question to add to that. My daughter, I'm Sarah, my daughter goes here to art, and she's in the grade school. And living in this town, you know, we have heard that the art education is a little higher than in some of the other in the area. And I'm proud of that, and I want that for my child. And I feel like we're not getting on the same page here. My child is gonna go from having a higher education to being dumbed down.
Oh, whoa, whoa.
Now, there's a gentleman way back in the corner that's been waiting.
Is there a guy?
Got his arm up.
Say something really quick. I am a third grade teacher from the ALAH grade school. And I'm proud. I have kids in the school district. I give my heart and soul to those kids every single day. I want you guys to know, and I have my own opinions on what is happening, but I want you to know that what the education that we are giving your children is 100%. Everything I have, I take my own time, my own money, my own everything. I spend my weekends there for your kids because I love them and I want to see them succeed 100%. And I want you guys to know that do not ever feel like your child is getting less, because they are not. We are a good staff, we are a good school, and I do not ever want you guys to think any different. I want you, if you guys could see what my fellow teachers all around me are doing, you would say, wow, wow. You are spending your summers in there. You are spending your evenings writing curriculum. You are spending it to make it better for your kids.
And that's why we don't want to give
And that's why we don't want to give, we want to keep our school strong, but I do not ever want for anyone to ever think that what we are doing is not educating your children for their futures. Because we are, 100%. We are giving them everything we have, and I'm telling you, whenever I'm sitting at lunch, it is sitting there going, what can we do different? How can we make this better? Hey, this worked. Hey, can I share it with you? And I am one person that will say, I have spent hours and hours and hours on curriculum to make it for your children. And I want you to say, I will share it with every single person in here. And I want you to know that I will share it with every single teacher. But I also want you to know that you never take the education of your children lightly. And my own children are there. And I 100% support every single one of my kids' teachers. And I support my administrators. And I support what we have going on. You know what, this is an issue? Yes, and I have my own feelings on it, and they know my feelings on it. But I don't ever want you guys to think that the education you are getting is not the best. And that we do not care, because each one of us do care.
I'm Denise Strack. I have taught in the Atwood building for 15 years, first grade. And I will tell you that this year is my first year that I've had to teach by myself. And I'm going to tell you right up front, I'm on the fence about all of this. My children don't go to school here, but I feel for all of you because my kids do ride a bus to their school. And I understand, and all of your kids are all of my kids, and they have been since I started teaching. But I will tell you, this is the hardest year I've ever had to teach. My partner in crime is no longer teaching with me. I can't go next door and say, hey, I can't get this to work with my kids. What are you trying? With curriculum, every school improvement we have, we are together. The staff from all the buildings are together. And we sit in a room and we try to figure out by grade level what is working, what is not working. But I will tell you, I have a class that is, some of them are lower than others. I can't stay on the same pace as my neighbor down the hall or down the road, because if I do, I'm losing half my class. I will try my hardest to keep my curriculum where it needs to be and as equal as it can be to that first grade teacher, the first grade teachers here, the first grade teachers in Lovington. But it's almost impossible right now for me to communicate, and not communicate, but to work with those other 3 first graders, teachers, and every day, in and out. I need help with this. I reach out to the people in my building, but they're not teaching the class that I am. They're not teaching the grade that I am. They're not teaching those children that I am. Some years are harder than others, and we look at it forwards and backwards and what has worked and what doesn't work. And like I said, I'm on the fence of this, but if I were to be in a building where I could walk down the hallway to every one of my first grade teachers, and I could say, look, I can't, they are not getting this at all. What did you try? That's the style of teaching, that's the difference in style of teaching, and that's how we all reach all of your children. And if I could walk down the hallway and reach each one of those teachers and get 4 other ideas of how to present a lesson to my students, I think that's a win-win even more. So I'm asking for all of you to keep your minds open. I know the busing is not ideal, but they're also, this is a study. This is the beginning of what's could be to come. Nobody's saying right now, this is exactly how it's going to be. They're gonna do some more research. We're gonna have to do some more research. We're all in it for the same kids, those present and those past. But please keep your minds open, because this is the hardest year I've ever had to teach by myself in one building without a partner in crime to knock on the door and say, hey, I'm struggling. Or, hey, I have this really cool idea. Let's do this next week with all of our kids together. We do so many things together, and I don't have that this year. And I know Lovington's in the same position because they have one section of each grade. And that makes it really hard as far as where I come from anyway. And like I said, I'm very passionate about these kids and these other teachers that are here from my building and our whole district, because by golly, if we're not doing our jobs, we are being told that we're not doing our jobs. Those administrators do the best that they can to come to us and say, you know what, this is what we need to be doing. But it's hard. It's hard to say, I'm gonna do chapter 3, page 8 on Tuesday. I may not get to it until 2 weeks from Tuesday because they are not getting the concept. That's hard in curriculum building, and that's hard in teaching. Thank you.
I'm Crystal Vander. Ask, this is the only thing you've come up with. By the next school board meeting, can we have some other ideas?
Tonight's session was a study session on attendance centers. So right now, that's all we're prepared to discuss. We are not saying that we are closed-minded to any idea. Part of our job is trying to figure out what is best for all of these students. Every student that goes to these buildings.
That's not what I asked. I understand that, what you said. It's a study, but we need more studies to, and, you know, to give us some more, you know, what's next happening.
Well, I just think everybody in the room just doesn't want this to go to vote in 2 weeks. I think that's what everybody's worried about.
It's not going to go to vote in 2 weeks.
Okay, that's all. We want to make sure that that's what happens, because this seems like we need a little bit more research, and there's a lot of raw feelings in the room.
And that's why we're having a study session. I see everybody here, they're writing down questions they're going to ask, and we'll get answers for questions, and probably in the meantime, there'll be other questions brought up.
Well, we appreciate
Usually one
that.
question brings another one.
I'll be honest, just as a board member, I mean, this is really the first, I mean, we're learning about it when you're learning about it, as far as the conversation, we're all learning together on what the different options are, as far as on what this even means from an attendance center. So I guess I understand it's emotional, and I understand that there's some concerns. We're just learning just like when you are as well, so don't think there's like a hidden agenda, you know, as far as trying to do something, things like that. That's not where we're at. We're just trying to get feedback from you. At the same time, we're learning about it as well. So.
We've only been together for 4 years now, and there's obviously been struggles with more than just curriculum. Do you think that we've had enough time to implement our curriculum as teachers and everything? Is there enough of a sample size to know that, hey, what we're doing now isn't working? Or are we building off of that, and 2 years down the road we're going to say, you know what, we've learned, and we're going to be able to do this with just the way that we're handling it now? I don't know if you guys have done any studies as far as, you know, has this class, has 1 year made a difference, or anything like that?
I think it's, like you mentioned earlier, it's an ongoing process. I mean, I don't think we have the ability to, you know, to grade that necessarily. I mean, it's just like our state test. Every 3 years, the state tests change.
Yeah.
So it's hard to make comparisons, but this is an ongoing process, and we're not going to stop. Whether we go to attendance centers or we stay the way they are now, we're going to continue every day to try to get better. I mean, that's what they do.
Yeah, right.
My name is Brianna Yates, and I'm a fourth grade teacher here in town. And I went to school here and all that. Has anybody ever asked the Amish community? I'm afraid we're losing. And we have an Amish representative right here.
and I had his son last year, and I'm afraid we're gonna lose him.
I've had a conversation just briefly with Jerry Otto, not with all 4 Amish reps yet. I just told them what we're talking about. I don't know. I know Jerry was going to be out of town, I believe, but we've had a brief conversation, and there'll be a further discussion.
You can talk. You have all.
Yeah, Bob's back.
Bob is.
Yeah,
KJ Porter, speaking on the self-contained, I've lived here my whole life, got a lot of Amish friends myself, best friends. The question is, you're doing 252 square miles. I hope the board understands this and don't get brainwashed, but you're looking at a kid that may live in Cooks Mill or Cadwell, Chesterville, whatever. They've got to deal with 2 or 3 meetings a year and 2 or 3 times a year. They don't get any other benefit other than the school to 8th grade. There's no sporting events. There's no, it's their choice. They get nothing else. But they still pay the same tax dollars that we do. And they still help this town go. And I just hope the board will listen, because our superintendent, Mr. Swindle's gonna be nice, retired in 3 years and be gone. And our board's got less experience than what some other areas have. I just hope our board listens to everybody. That's a lot of travel for an Amish guy and an Amish family, but thanks.
You said that you weren't gonna cut any teachers, and some are gonna retire and stuff. And I don't wanna see any teachers go or have to be cut or whatever for the fiscal. But I'm curious as to how come some of the schools have assistant principals, but then Atwood doesn't?
They have about 400 students, and
Atwood has.
we have like 292, so they have.
And the grade school. So then, what would you do with assistant principals when you're lowering it down to like 290? So the K through 2nd grade's not gonna have an assistant principal at Arthur? Is that what your plan is, or?
We would have to.
Yeah, I mean, that'll have to be determined. Like Amanda Romine is assistant principal now, but that's part of her assignment. She's part-time assistant principal, part-time tech coordinator, so to speak.
But she would be needed if you only have 290, because Atwood doesn't have one, and they've got, what, 290 kids?
Could possibly be reassigned to the junior high. It just, that's.
And I'm in all 3 buildings every week.
From my understanding, isn't there a deficit of teachers in general? So, I mean, if some of them went to different schools, like if they didn't have a job here anymore, there's plenty, is that right? I mean, there's plenty of teaching jobs around, even if it wasn't, not all teachers are from Atwood, Arthur, or Lebanon, where they would be devastated if they didn't have a job.
Would you not be devastated if you didn't have a job?
There's other jobs.
It doesn't matter where they live though and go to school. I mean, I think if any of them would get job cut, they would be devastated. I mean, if you went to work and had your, maybe you don't care about your job, I don't know, but would you not be devastated?
So, but as
I don't think he's moving.
education, I'm not worried about finding a job as a teacher once I am a teacher, because there's a plethora of teaching jobs available. And as we were just talking about it the other day, that they're trying, they're not very good with promotions, but they're trying to get.
Jesse, J.E.
Bill Fleming, Atwood, has there been any discussion amongst the board or administration about what school year you would like to have this implemented in, should it be accepted?
That's been part of the discussion on whether or not it's something that could be implemented next year, depending on how that went, or if we need to, if it was approved, it could be the following year after that. So there's no time.
There's no goal in mind as far as like to get, if the decision's gonna be made in time to get it started by the next couple of years.
Right. Thought about that, well, this is a cutoff, if there hasn't been a decision by this time, we haven't said anything like that.
As far as I wanted to address part of the financial statements that were made tonight, and I'm not living in the past, but 4 years ago, we were going through the annexation process. I know in Atwood, and I think in the other towns, we were pretty much told that we were gonna be able to absorb all of these kids into these attendance, into the current attendance centers, the grade schools and high schools, without, we had the facilities that we needed, we had everything that we needed in place, we were gonna go through attrition at that time to get the staff where it needed to be and that type of thing. And all of a sudden, 4 years later, the total enrollment is less than what it was 4 years ago by about 5 or 6 students. And there's been a building built in Arthur, and now thinking about building a grade or a gymnasium in Arthur, when really the total enrollment hasn't changed. So I'm not addressing the curriculum side of it, or I know the busing is an animal all by itself, but the financial perspective of it is, I guess I don't see what changed in 4 years, that all of a sudden we need these facilities when the total enrollment's been less than what it was 4 years ago.
I mean, the only facility that's been talked about would be a gym at Arthur Grade School. And I think that was possibly, that was before I got here, but I think it was like maybe a phase 2 to the junior high wing. You know, from a financial standpoint, I think most of us knew with the reorganization incentives, that was gonna buy us time, you know, through the attrition and so forth. But quite frankly, I mean, we're still at a point where we have more staff than we need. I mean, we're running 3 junior highs, and that, you can,
So attrition by itself, just from now for the next couple of years, won't take care of where we need to be if we don't do anything?
no, because we're still gonna have to have 3 junior highs.
So how will attrition take place if we move buildings around? I mean, attrition's gonna be attrition whether we have 3 buildings,
Right.
whether we have them all here or have them all there.
But just like, say we have 6 fourth grade teachers right now, if all the 4th graders were together, you wouldn't necessarily need 6 4th grade teachers. You could possibly be 5 or 4 or 5.
So you're gonna rip them?
Not necessarily.
How do you get to the lower staffing level if it's not ripped?
It's reutilizing your resources, I guess, like I talked about an instructional coach. You know, you can use some of those teachers, if they fit that bill, to try to improve instruction.
But the cost of staff doesn't go down.
Well, as people leave, you wouldn't necessarily have to replace them. I mean, people come and go. I mean, financially, if things don't turn around financially, then we may have to look at different teachers. I mean, I think every school district around us would say that. If things do not improve, then we would have to look at that.
Whether we do attendance centers or not.
Quite possible.
I actually have some comments on our questions, so I'm sorry I went to Tasha again, but I understand we do have to do public things, at a minimum, and just, I ask with this going forward, because I am really trying hard to find, like, all the good parts about doing this without overshadowing what I personally think are the negatives, so I would really like to hear more things, and as a resident, a taxpayer, mom, I would appreciate if we would have more openness and more transparency rather than the bare minimum that is legally needed for steps like this. Does that make sense? Like, I don't know what the process is to make this. I know this was, kind of a, like you said, a meeting to talk about things, but, before we vote, I don't know what the rules are that you have to present to the public, this, or if you have to present anything to us. But I would just hope you would keep in mind that, the more we know, the more I personally feel comfortable knowing that everything's getting looked at. And I would just hope that would, be something that you keep in your mind, that I think more talk is better. This rumor going around a while ago used the exact same terminology, and we were told that it wasn't even, nothing to worry about, and this term came up again. So I have a very hard time personally believing that this has recently been talked about, because I believe we got an email about it, put out on some kind of social media. Don't worry about this. If and when it comes, we start that planning, we'll let you know. And so I feel personally a little bit that it was not fully truthful of, the planning stages. I've had teachers that have been teachers for 25 years did not know what an attendance center was. So the fact that exact same phrase was used last year, or early, I don't remember exactly what it was, just concerns me that we're not getting told as a community what is going on. That's all.
Well, to be honest with you, as a board, we could have voted on this and it would have been a done deal.
That's my point.
We're being open, we're bringing this out here. This may not be the only meeting. If we get questions answered and it brings up more questions, we may have more meetings in the future to explain things. We're trying to be transparent.
Right, and that's.
I don't
what
know what's
asked.
on social media, I don't pay attention to it because most of it's just a load of.
Most of it is, but, yeah, but that was my point. It wasn't, I think I would personally feel better if it was transparent. I get it that you could have voted on this and it would have been a done deal. That's fine. I don't believe that you would have done that because you were voted members of the community and I believe that this is what would happen. I'm just saying, I hope that in your mind, when you're doing this planning station, that you would do more than the minimum required than the least amount.
I'll be the first to admit that I was the one that stirred the pot last year about this time, completely unintentionally. I heard the word attendance center float around and I thought, what did I miss? So I posted on Facebook trying to gather information on what an attendance center is and where we were in the process. Little did I realize that I started that pot stirring. And like I said, it was completely unintentional. But back then, it was stated, and there were memos sent out, and there were statements made that if and when this discussion happens, they will go through a process. There will be meetings. There will be this, and this is what they're doing. So it is very easy for us to get instantly defensive that I don't want my kid to go to another school. I don't want my kid on a bus. I agree completely. But if we're talking about what's best for our kids, and they're doing their due diligence, let them do their due diligence. We're mad that this is the only thing on the table. Well, we want them to study this before they can say, this might not work, okay? There's been people that have brought other ideas. Well, we have to do this to get to an end result. So keep an open mind. I'm not saying that this is the right answer. I'm just saying they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. I mean, they're having the meeting. They didn't say that they were going to vote next week. This is a study session. They said they're going to have public meetings. We just have to have faith and have to trust that they're going to do what they say they're going to do. So I do have one question on top of that. Is there a cutoff date with the teachers union or any other cutoff date for this to happen next year?
You mean as far as?
Does the teachers union have to know that we are?
You're saying if
switching to
attendance centers
centers?
went forward next year, is there a cutoff date?
Yes.
Basically this spring?
Correct.
No.
There is no cutoff date, nothing in the contract that says they have to know before.
Typically, they need to know their assignment by the end of the school year. So I think that's.
But no
basically
cutoff
all.
date. Okay.
If this was going to go forward, I would say probably need a minimum 4 months before the start of school next year. But there's a lot of things that have to be gone over before anything goes farther.
I didn't mean to cut you off, I apologize. I've done a little bit of my own research and looked at other school districts. I've talked to a couple superintendents. And a lot of these processes on schools that switch to attendance centers, they spend years on. So you're talking 4 months, that seems like it's rush middle.
No, I was saying that would be the minimum time to
Okay.
have a decision made to start getting everything ready.
Okay, I
So
understand, I apologize.
that would probably be the minimum time.
Okay, I just know that
between
this-
moving the buildings and different things like that.
Sure, there's a lot of logistics that go with it. I
Correct.
just think that it would make us all rest assured that we're going to spend ample time on this and do a lot of the research, because it's not an easy decision, and I am glad it's you and not me.
Chair, right?
I'm Tracy Miller. And does this have to be okayed by the state? You say you get your money back from transportation by the state. What if they say, you send them this bill and it's $401,000 and it's like, we ain't paying that.
No, as long as it's allowable mileage, they're obligated.
They're obligated.
To reimburse you 84%.
Okay.
I have a question. I didn't ask this question earlier. With the testing scores and these attendance centers, has anybody done the research to see what we should expect and how the alignment increases the test scores for our children? The positive of it, is that evidence out there? Because I know my wife and I have asked to see where the schools are at in the past. We haven't been able to get that information, so I don't know if you can get that information.
That information is available on the school report card. Each building has a school report card that should be posted on the school website. So that should be good. As far as the research on testing, I think most of the research indicates that this does make a
Is there a percentage that the scores go up and the students learn?
I don't know that. I mean, I think it varies from school to school. Of course, that's gonna obviously class to class from year to year.
Because I do think, based on my 4 daughters that have gone through to date, I do think we're doing a better job this year than we did 5 years ago. But I still think we got some work to do. So I think it's a good thing to explore and see where it goes.
In the research I've done, some of the school districts that have switched, two of the concerns that I was curious about that they had were how this affects parent involvement and if it still allows for student mentoring. Like right now in my daughter's kindergarten class, I see older students come in and help certain days of the week. Would that opportunity still be there? Or since there would be a limited, closer age group, would it be something that's a thing of the past?
I think that could still be an option. We just have to look at how to make it possible. Yeah, we haven't studied that aspect of it.
I didn't expect you to have an answer tonight. I was just curious if you would answer that in the future.
Just as a previous kindergarten teacher though, I mean, I know that we had third graders come in and talk with us and do different projects with us. We had second graders come in. I mean, so it's one of those things where just like a teacher does every day of their life, they're flexible and they adapt to their situation. And I think in any building, whenever you have older kids and younger kids, you can adapt to that and you can bring that involvement in somehow.
My name's Amy Strong. I work here in Arthur. I live here in Arthur. We moved here to Arthur so my kids could go to Arthur schools. We made that choice. And we came from Atwood. I liked Atwood. But we came to Arthur because this is where I wanted my child to go to school. Because I worked here. I wanted to be able to be down the street from my children at school. So if there was a problem, I could be there. In today's day and age, you don't know what's going to happen or when it's going to happen at a school, anywhere. I want to be close to my kids. I'm scared. We're all scared. There's been so much that has happened recently in high schools and colleges. We're all scared. We want to be close to our kids. I just want to know. That's kind of a driving force behind, I think, some of the concern too, is the day and age we're in right now. The thought of taking my child 10 minutes more away, and I've got another child 10 minutes more away, and I don't know what's going on, because the information that comes out in the all-call system, which sometimes I don't even get a day later, you know, I find out that something happened, and my child's at school, that something happened, and I don't know what happened, because there was some detail given, but not all. Concerns like that, I think, is part of the driving force behind some of the concerns as far as moving kids farther away from parents. Another thought I had, and I was totally separate from that, we have very few that the kiddos come in late or don't show up totally regularly, or the parents oversleep, and there's nothing the kids can do about that. They get there when they get there. But if those parents wake up and have kids in 2 or 3 different towns, those kids aren't going to get to school. You know, they're going to be attending even less than they already attend, because you can barely get them in your own town, or they have to walk to school and get there late. They're not going to end up in Lovington if they're from Atwood. So I'm just thinking about those kiddos that really need to be at school that are going to attend even less because of distance, if they miss the bus. And,
instead of missing an hour of school, they're gonna miss a day of school. And that adds up over and over again with target children, which is a concern of ours. And when they get there, we're like, okay, did you get a breakfast, did you do that? So,
And it's
that is
something that's a way bigger concern in Atwood than I saw when I taught in Arthur, and I'm sure Lovington also, with maybe a lower income population than Arthur has, probably sees more of as well. And you know, maybe if it's not just a gym, maybe it's a junior high, where our K through 6 can stay at their facilities, and then have a junior high, because they're being bused already. Why not have their own facility where they have their own gym? I mean, the Christian school just built a beautiful facility. I mean, it's gorgeous, in case you haven't seen it. I mean, it's a beautiful facility, and it comparable to the size I would think we would possibly need for a junior high, maybe just a little bigger.
Tori Murphy from Atwood. Have you thought about what it's going to do to the communities? I know certain people move to Atwood because they want their kids to go to Atwood, and people go to Arthur because they want to go to Arthur School. And now they're not going to know where to live because it's going to be all jumbled around. And I mean, there's people, like I said, that move to Atwood because they want their kids to go to Atwood. Have you thought about what it will do to the communities?
Part of me thinks it'll make the school stronger.
Right.
I mean, if you've got,
The school, I'm talking about the communities.
well, I think,
So is anybody going to want to live in Atwood because it's 3rd through 5th is all that's there? That's what I'm saying.
well, I think we ran into that question with the whole annexation. You know, if any part of that was gonna be appealing to anybody that wanted to move in, but if you've got Lovington kids, Arthur kids, and Atwood Hammond kids, at the Lovington grade school, I think those parents come together to that building because their kids are there. And I think the same thing happens in Atwood or at Arthur grade school. You're gonna hopefully support the school where your child attends, and I think that makes that stronger, and that hopefully breaks some of those bonds between, you know, well, it's Arthur, well, it's Atwood, well, it's Lovington, which I think we still struggle with.
That's what I would say, just from a high school point of view. I'm not for this, I've got first graders, so they would have to travel to it, okay? But just in talking to the high school kids, and I'm a PE teacher, I don't want my program cut, okay? I believe in it for a reason. But a lot of times, what we see is when they get to high school, it's like, oh, well, they're from Arthur, they're from Atwood, they're from Lovington. And this is just one of the things I see that might be good about this. Like I said, I'm not for or against it. I'm not. But instead, it's like, this is the freshman class. If they all went to school together for all this time, it wouldn't be like, oh, well, that coach plays them because they're from Arthur, or something like that. But, so that's a positive I see in it. There's negatives too. And so, like I said, I'm not for or against it, but from what I hear from some of the high school kids, that's one of the things I hear. I mean, it would make it more united at an older level. And I know most of us are concerned about our younger kids. I get that. But that's just another thing to think about.
I can speak to that as well. I'm the social worker at the high school, and I'm the freshman class sponsor. You know, your students a lot of times are in a 20 to 30 size class until they get here. And social emotionally, a lot of times are not really ready to handle a 90-person class and the size that our high school truly is now. And just piggybacking off of what Dana said, it really takes them until halfway through their junior year to come together as a class, to really trust each other, to make those relationships. You know, high school is hard enough, and then you get here and there's, 350 new faces, or 330 new faces, because you knew 20 of them. It's really difficult for them. And like she said, there's positives and negatives, but I do see one positive to be, they're gonna have those relationships starting at kindergarten, working all the way up, so.
I will have to say too, we have a lot of kids that go like these months, and then they might be in Lovington and Arthur. I mean, this really does happen a lot in our communities, moving. But, so these kids are moving, building to building, that if this were something that ever did happen, the kids would still be, if they're 3rd grade, they'd still remain in those buildings. They wouldn't have to get used to a different building all over, and then months down the road, go again. So I just want to, that would help in that aspect, when families do have to move for whatever reason, because those kids are going back and forth in the different buildings and getting reinvested to new teachers and new kids all over again.
I have a question. I don't know if it's already been brought up and I missed it, but how many square miles is our district? 252. Sorry, I missed that. I was looking through the slide trying to find it. Do we know how many miles are from the farthest point here to the farthest point of each end of the district? Have we measured that out? Can anyone tell me? It's important to me.
I can tell you from where I used to live over in Lovington. I grew up in Lovington, saw the high school, going away, whatever. I live basically the farthest west that you can live almost.
We do.
Yeah,
We're
so. Kind of like with Andy and those, you know, the kids rode the bus, all that stuff, and it basically round trip was 34 miles. Okay, so
From Lovington to where? Or on your bus route?
To Arthur, basically, from there to here,
From
because
our
I had.
driveway, we're 17 miles to this high school.
Yeah, I had.
You always have to come to Atwood. What? It's about, I mean, it's the same.
It's about 6 to 1, half dozen the other, a little bit farther to Atwood.
But our kids get on the bus at 7 in the morning, and we have a pre-K-er, and then we have a second grader, and they get dropped off. She gets dropped off between 4 and 4:10. So she reads on the bus, she has made new friends on the bus, she knows more older age kids due to the fact that she rides the bus, as opposed to us picking her up and bringing her home each day. I don't know, we don't really see a problem because she already sits at the school waiting for the high school kids to come, and then that bus from Lovington delivers the kids. So I understand your guys' issues, but at the same time, there's people that are already dealing with that, and we never had to say anything, so. No, my husband farms, we didn't really have to say anything. They chose to live close to the Atlas school. Right. They bought their house to do something. And I mean, and I understand that, but I mean, it's either that, or we are 5 miles from the Bethany grade school, or we could pay like $9,000 a year to send our kid there. So I mean,
Yeah,
what's the choice, so.
Research that's being conducted, is it comparable to our district size? Like, is there somebody else that's gone through this attendance center change that is a district of 250 square miles? Or are these all like within town, you know, like smaller mileage? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't looked at all the research. I mean, and obviously the districts vary. One of them was like 202 square miles or something like that. I mean, somewhat similar.
Okay.
Did you go through the district? It was Marion County, it was Unit 2 area, down south.
And they were like 202 or 209 square miles. And they've been doing it since 1996.
Were those spread out among 3 different towns like that?
I think there were more than 3 towns.
8.
There were like 8
towns. But can you say they had 8 buildings?
I think there were like 8.
I mean, 3 different schools, I don't know how many towns.
What'd you
Eight, like 3 different, like 8 different towns, like school buildings though?
No.
That's what, that was, I
They
think
did
that's
it
what trying to say,
twice.
that, like, this would be 3 different buildings.
Right.
I guess it's comparable research.
Just look.
We just started
Just look it
looking
up on
into
the
that
internet.
one, like we were just trying to research some that were similar, and that one came up, so there's still more to look at.
Hi, I'm Haley Tippin, and I grew up not here, so I'm a transferee. My family just went through this a few years ago with my old high school, or my old town, and it was including 6, 8 small towns, and they all came together, and they unified it. And, you know, teachers are saying there's Atwood kids, there's Hammond kids, there's Lovington kids. Have you guys ever thought about unifying, which means taking the emotion out of it and building a unified school? That would be a new name, a new mascot, and new colors. But it takes, you can't have,
But we're all
you
off.
can't have anything of that.
We're all off.
You're not unifying the buildings.
You know, like Okaw
Oh,
Valley,
you mean
Sangamon
if we
Valley.
were able to build
Yeah.
one school
Yeah.
for
Well,
Just,
everyone.
I guess, rename the school district. I know you renamed it ALHA, or AH. But the names of the towns are still individualized. It's not the, so when you make it attendance centers, there would be a junior high. So what would that name be? Lovington Junior High? You know what I'm saying? All the kids would go there.
No, it'd be called ALAH Junior High. I know what you're saying.
But you know what I'm saying?
Come up with a different
It
actual.
does bring a lot of emotion and
Kind of
pride
like Bruce Wayne becoming Batman. That's it.
to the whole thing too. So.
No, it's a good point. It's a good point. Sean's been up and down.
We haven't even got that far yet with the discussion. So this is a study session, we're just trying to gather questions that people have and put some information out and go back and do more research. And it may come to that point, I mean, we may do that. That's farther down the road.
Would you consider having community members, not just administration and teachers on that community affairs committee?
Well, that'd almost be getting like, during the annexation, they had the committee of 10, and that, if I remember correctly, most of those committees were made up of, people from the towns.
So what we did when we, so in both annexations, 2014, we have 10 people that were made up from the different communities. And we did things that we talked about, transportation, so we could have like a group of, let's say, maybe, we really weren't supposed to have the administration team on that one because that one was more of a total vote, so we probably could do that this time. But what it was is, committee of 10, but then within their subgroups on that worked on transportation, curriculum, had teachers involved, had staff involved as far as on mostly the curriculum part of it. Linda Castile did a lot of the math curriculum as we had it together that first time. But it was just looking at that from that standpoint on how you try to bring everything together.
To go on with kind of the unification, I have a sophomore, she's sophomore. And she has mentioned that coming in, there has been a definite segregation of, well, you're not an Arthur kid, so you're not a part of anything. When she was in 8th grade, there was student council votes. Atwood didn't even vote. They weren't even a part of the live feed vote of the student council. So she wasn't even included in an option to be part of her freshman year of school. So I'm all for unifying the kids in a way. But maybe we could use some of that transportation reimbursement to maybe on our half days of school that we've had where we're doing little activities and the kids are playing leadership games and stuff, we bus those kids that are in the same grade to those attendance centers for those half days. The 6th graders all come and they have an attendance center or have a learning day or your field days or whatever you call them for those half days where they can all bond as a grade for those certain days of the year. We have done that some in the past years. I know like our 6th grade has gotten together with the 6th grade.
Also, all of our field trips are now, it's not Lovington, 3rd grade goes to the zoo. Atwood's 3rd grade goes to the planetarium. All field trips are now planned by the teachers of all 3rd grade. So they all go to one place. Everybody gets on 2, 3, however many buses we need, and they all go to the same place. So we can start that bonding.
But you're still segregated. You've got your Lovington bus and this, and then you go.
Not necessarily. A lot of times, based upon the size of the classes, we'll come over. Mr. Van Alsdal knows this more because he does transportation, but we'll come over like Lovington if we have not very many. A bunch of Atwood or a bunch of Arthur will get on our bus, and we'll kind of commingle and get everybody together.
Now, I'll be honest with you, with the big groups that we have to separate into groups once we get to those places, and it's hard to have those kids intermingle like when they're on the trip because you have to separate into groups to go to like they used to go to Springfield and they would be scheduled at a certain time. But like at lunch, like our theory is that at lunch and all those downtimes, they can get together and they do that. And I don't want anybody in this room to leave thinking that we don't have excellent schools in every town that we have.
Oh, I totally
We do. And as far as the curriculum and being consistent, again, we are doing our due diligence and trying to make it better. Our teachers are doing great. Our staff, our admin team works well together and takes it back. And so I don't want anybody to leave here and think, that's not happening. But our job is to make sure, you know, where can we get better? And if we're not doing that, then you should be questioning us on that. So that's.
And it's like I said, I just, some of those team building skills, instead of doing it within the handful of kids in your class, do those team building skills.
Right.
Incorporate that with the other schools.
And this year we did do some assemblies together too, where we.
Assemblies where you're sitting there and watching and
Well,
not.
but they were interactive ones. They were.
I remember. I know if you're taking hundreds of kids to one location and then you're busing them to another location, you're talking, what's the limit on a bus? 72 kids? Ask a bus driver if they can handle 72 kids on a bus, even if it's 13 miles, even if it's 9 miles, whatever the mileage is. Are we willing and considering adding an 8 to those buses every day? I mean, I know it's hard to find people to do stuff like that, people to drive buses, people to do 8 stuff. These are things that, I mean, it's easy to forget, but whenever you've got so many issues with that many kids or putting that many kids so close together, you're talking 3 kids on a seat. Maybe that's not going to be the case on every bus, but to think that we could do that without an 8, I think is beyond comprehension. Not that you have, I'm not saying that you haven't thought of that, it's just something that I want to mention. The other thing I wanted to ask, correct me if I'm wrong, the principals are doing the legwork for all of this and gathering and doing the research, correct? Correct. Yeah. Okay. I know just from working in a school district how much stuff principals do, and I think someone said earlier that they're already struggling with going to all the classrooms and making sure we're staying on curriculum. Is there any way to maybe make that committee a committee of your teachers or of your community members or of a mix? I'm not saying that they're all as busy as the other, but if we're already struggling in other areas, maybe we're using our resources wrong.
It all comes back to we have very giving communities, and if you need help, all you have to do is ask. I know there's a lot of people that would love to help.
Justin Green, appreciate you guys putting this together. Maybe a little premature, but you guys are doing your, trying to be transparent. And thanks to the school board, we've elected the school board here because they are representatives of our community. And I look up there and I see several of you got 3 kids that got to go through the school system. So I have faith in that you guys have the same questions, same concerns we do, and appreciate, put our trust in you guys. And I really liked hearing from the teachers. I thought that was worthwhile. I'd like to hear a little bit more from the teachers, because when I look at this, I kind of prioritize in my mind what's number 1 priority. To me, it's the quality of education of the kids. So if we accomplish that with an attendance center, then we got to look at it. If we accomplish a better, higher level of education by doing something like this, then what's it cost? Does it save us money? If it does, great. If it costs a little more, maybe it's worth it. If we can improve, and I'm hearing from you guys, the teachers, and how that you can collaborate. I mean, that makes a lot of sense to me. My grandparents and your grandparents grew up walking uphill to school both ways, and they did fine. I rode a school bus all my years in school. My kids do now. The kids will be fine. Kids are resilient. They won't know any better. They're fine. They'll make friends. Transportation doesn't scare me at all. But again, thanks for what you're doing, and I think you're doing your job and looking at opportunities and how can we further education. So, again, thank you guys.
Thanks, Chris Van. I kind of do have a little I wonder about the safety of it all. Because you think about your bus and all these kids all day, every day. I don't know if you guys remember a couple years ago, outside Charlotte, there was a drunk driver hit a school bus turned over. You know what, I buried a kid due to a car accident. So, I mean, that's something you guys need to keep in mind. Your kids are on that road, man. That bus driver's going 55. Hey, I got to all of a sudden, man, better check to see who it was real quick. It just takes that to roll a bus, or you know what I'm saying? My kids are going to be on that. Your kids are going to be on that. And I'm telling you what, you guys look into that and really think about that. So I'm sure there might be people in this room who has had that, haven't had a kid, you know, in a car accident, been buried, you know, and you got to go through that and tell your other kids that did make it, you know what, sorry, bud, you know, your sister was on that bus, and, you know, there ain't nothing you can do about that, or, you know, just got to fill the rest of your days. Just, I'm sorry we had to put her in Atwood, you know, think about that for a minute. It can happen. It don't say it can't happen, because it can happen. I never thought, I was naive when I was at Dakota, when I had Dakota. We were real naive to let our kid, you know, go, yeah, sure, go ahead, take our kid, you know, we'll play ball, that's fine, that's great. You know what, they came back from playing ball, and most of you, anybody who knows me, there was 4 people that died in that call. 4 people, 3 of them were kids, okay? So don't act like it can't happen, because it can happen. And you're putting these kids out here, hundreds of kids, not just one. You're putting hundreds of kids out here on the roads for extra hours and extra hours and extra hours every day, 5 days a week. So keep that in consideration too, before it always looks so great to put kids in the car. I just want to bring that up. Thanks.
I'm curious as to, you guys say you don't want them on the bus, like over an hour and stuff. So my kid, right, I take my kid because I don't want my kid on the bus that much. And I want to spend more time with my kid, and I want my kid to get more sleep, that stuff. But how come, like, my kid has to ride an hour in the morning and an hour at night? How come you guys don't do like a reverse thing to limit? How come the ones that miss all the day have to miss it all in the morning and all at night? How come it can't be the reverse way? Like the first one on in the morning, the first one off in the afternoon? I mean, how come you guys have never thought about doing anything like that to fair it up? Oh, that's just you guys did.
I'll address it.
When I was in school, we did that, yeah.
I can address that for you. Most of the routes are reversed. There are a few that aren't. Depends on the situation. What helps the most kids get them off the quickest. Every situation is a little different. So there are a couple of our routes that run the same way of a nighttime as they do in the morning, but most of them are reversed.
Well, I don't understand why you can't just run the route backwards.
That's reversed.
I mean, if I could go around school this way, I could go around backwards, so I don't.
You have the little kids that you make a route to where they get on the school bus on the right side where the door is. You don't have them going around your bus to go get on.
Every route's made a little different.
I have them come in my drive to get on, so I don't really care. I just
Where do you live?
I live out in the country, between Hammond and Atwood.
Hey, Jim, I want to
So
talk
because
about
I'm
my
a country
situation,
person, I gotta.
you know, where my daughter got off last year. Okay, so we live in town, but we're like the furthest house, the bus stop in Atwood. And last year, there was a situation, the bus would pick her up the last stop coming in, that was the bus stop at the end of our street, and then they drop off going out of town after school. So I live as you turn into Atwood, the first street. And when they drop off, she would have to cross, and she's not the only one. We have like 2 or 3 down our street or in our neighborhood that get picked up at that bus stop. Anyway, on the way home, she has to cross Main Street in Atwood, which is only 150 feet from 36. And last year, there was an incident. If the bus driver hadn't have stopped the girls after they got off the bus, a fire truck flew by the bus she wouldn't be here, okay? So we contacted Jim and said, we want her, can we have her ride the whole bus route? So I know she's coming off that bus safe. So she's probably on the bus about 40 minutes now. Whereas she was getting off that bus 10 minutes right after school. So they are willing, they're looking at, the safety of the kids and how they get off. And, I just wanted to point that out, that we went from a 10-minute bus ride to a 40-minute bus ride. And we were totally fine with it because of the safety of my child.
Okay, we've been here about getting close to 2 hours. This was basically sort of the first run through for everybody to get information, for us to get questions back. So we're going to call it a night. I thank everybody for coming, and there will be more information forthcoming. Thank you for coming.